Moving on to a different story here. The legal fight over the Trump administration's deportation of Venezuelan migrants to El Salvador continues to play out in a D.C. appeals court. Today is the deadline for the Justice Department to explain to Judge James Boasber why and how they failed to follow his orders that temporarily blocked such deportations. Trump officials argue that their use of the Alien Enemies Act targets gang members, and that is why the Justice Department is trying to get Boasberg's decision overturned. So let's bring in CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen, who's been following this story for us. Jake, good to see you today. What are the chances that Judge Boasber will get all of his questions answered?
Almost zero, and that's because last night the Department of Justice and the executive branch decided to invoke the state secret privilege, which means that they're invoking national security reasons and national security secrets for why they will not disclose any answers to Judge Boasberg's questions. The only thing that the government has put so far in the record of this court case is what time these two planes left U.S. airspace and went over international waters and airspace on their way to El Salvador. They have not answered what time these alleged gang members were brought from wherever they were stationed and put on planes, what time, whether any notice was given to these people of where they were being taken, thus potentially giving them room if they could make a phone call or call an attorney to file a legal challenge to block their deportation, and what time the government was made aware at the White House, what time Judge Boasberg's order was called from a Department of Justice attorney to the White House, and then after that, as we know, the ultimate decision to not turn those planes around. A lot of unanswered questions. Judge Boasberg has ordered that by today, the Department of Justice is due to explain why it did not turn those planes around. The plaintiffs, including the ACLU and its attorneys, will have an opportunity to respond to that. In addition to the plaintiffs will also have an opportunity to respond to why they feel it's inappropriate for the government to potentially invoke the state secret privilege. So a lot more to come on this, and this all comes on the heels of yesterday's argument in front of a D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals as to whether Judge Boasberg even had the authority in the first place to put this block on these deportations.
And we know judges who have blocked President Trump's agenda could be in the hot seat next week. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that's right. There's news reports that Jim Jordan, who leads the House Judiciary Committee and has long been a critic of judges, what he calls activist judges in the judicial system who have blocked these Trump executive orders or executive actions. There's over 160 lawsuits that we're tracking right now. There are about 2 dozen instances of these judges blocking these with either nationwide injunctions, meaning that in one court case, a judge blocks the nationwide implementation of something, which in this case would be the Trump administration's, mass deportations or the military ban of transgender service members, things along those lines. He's hoping to call a hearing specifically related to Judge Boasberg's behavior, although it's unclear and very unlikely that they would be able to get Judge Boasberg in front of them for any kind of testimony, although that would not rule out bringing in outside groups who are critical of these kinds of judges and judges' decisions. Jim Jordan also said that he intends on potentially moving forward and at least looking into a bill in Congress that would look to block these kinds of wide-ranging judicial decisions from district court judges. Again, that would likely be unconstitutional, but that does not mean the House could hold hearings on it.
I was literally going to ask you if that was even constitutional in the first place. Thanks for answering that. While we have you here, Jake, I also want to ask you about another case that's playing out in court today, and that is the American Civil Liberties Union's lawsuit against Trump's executive order, which bars transgender people from updating their sex on their passports. What exactly is at stake here?
Well, it really relates again back to another Trump executive order in which on Inauguration Day, Donald Trump said out loud from the Capitol Hill stage where he was speaking that there are only two genders in America, male or female. There is no room for anyone who identifies outside of that as either an X on a passport, which typically identifies someone who is transitioning, or someone who just believes that they do not subscribe to either of those genders. There are about 12 legal cases so far involving either LGBTQ issues or the trans military service ban, things along those lines. This is one instance of that where people who have transitioned or do not identify as male or female are suing to block this implementation of this executive order, which again, on a formal government document, not at the state level of a driver's license, you would be forced to put yourself in one bucket or another.
Okay, CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.